Welcome to Expedition Networking, a special segment of the Networking RX podcast. I'm Frank Agan, founder and president of AmSpirit Business Connections, and your host for this program. For those of you who are familiar, on the Networking RX podcast, we share information and have conversations with experts, such as authors, researchers, and social scientists. And all of these programs are aimed at helping you learn how to become better at building professional relationships and understanding why they work. In this Expedition Networking segment, however, we're going to bring on successful entrepreneurs and unique professionals and explore their networking adventure and learn how they used relationships to create lasting success. Today on Expedition Networking, we have Maria Romanenko. Maria is actually in Ukraine. She's been a published, she's a journalist and an editor for the last 5 years, and she has focused on writing about confidence, self-growth, and well-being. I met Maria in the early part of the COVID lockdown. She had jumped onto a call that I'm on every month, or I put together every month, and I'll kind of let her talk about that. But I wanted to bring Maria on because when I first met Maria, my impression of her, you were very shy, and you were living in the UK at that point, and this call we have starts at 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern time, so it was almost midnight, or was midnight in the UK. And you came on the first time. I never expected you to come back, and you kept coming back and kept coming back and kept coming back. So anyhow, Maria, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Frank, and thank you for having me.
Can you share your story with us and just kind of your journey on your networking journey? Because again, my impression of you is you were shy. I think that's probably part of the story. It's part of everything you're doing right now. So I'll shut up and let you talk.
Sure. Yeah. I haven't really networked that much before January, which is when I first heard about this networking calls that you mentioned that you organize yourself, Networking Hub. And some people ask me, because I haven't, as you said yourself, that I haven't really been in Ukraine for a while, and I meet people that I haven't seen for a few months, and they ask me, so what you've been up to? And I'm like, I've been networking a lot. And they asked, networking, how did you get into that? And why did you start this? So I always say that partly it was kind of accidental and random that I started networking so much, and partly it was intentional and very much deliberate. And the random and accidental part is sort of connecting to the Networking Hub calls that you mentioned. It's basically because I attended at the beginning of January this year. I attended some sort of forum that was organized for blogging, something like that. It was organized, I think, by Medium website, which is for blogging. And somebody mentioned Lunch Club there, which is, you probably know Lunch Club. Mm-hmm. Probably a lot of people know what it is. It's just basically where you meet people one-on-one and you discuss sort of whatever you want to discuss, and they kind of try to match you with similar to yourself people. And I met Carrie Marafino there, who actually goes to this Networking Hub calls a lot. And she told me about Networking Hub. And she was like, you can check it out and see what it's like. And I was kind of just impressed by the whole concept. I was like, it's interesting. I never heard of that before, because this is basically like monthly calls where nobody has to pay anything. And it's all like completely voluntary, and people just invest by giving up their time, and they discuss what they need and what somebody can help them with and what they can help other people. And I thought it was like a very interesting concept. So I attended the first one, and then I met the first one. I think was like very, very interesting, even though, as you said yourself, I was quite shy, and that's just like a natural part of me when I'm in group surroundings. But I met lots of great people in the first one. And then I carried on meeting other people, and then some people that I met introduced me to more people, and it's just it's very interesting. So that's the random part, the kind of accidental, because it all just sort of happened. I wasn't looking for that specifically. I wasn't going on Google and type in networking things. But then the more intentional, deliberate part, it was more to do with my boyfriend, who I'm with now. And he is an amazing networker. Like, he just knows so many people, and lots of his friends like just call him and will say something like, that they need help with something, and he'll be immediately thinking, oh, I know that person who can help you with that. And I was just always like observing him, and I was just like, this is quite impressive, because I have never really been like that. I asked him lots of questions about it. I was like, oh, how do you do that? It looks really cool. I want to be able to do that. And he was telling me how important it is to just meet a lot of people. And I had just so many questions about all of that, because as a naturally very anxious person, it just seemed so out of my normal way of being, that I had to learn so much to see why people do it, how to do it. And I'm obviously not claiming that I'm like great at it now, but there was definitely a lot of things that I have learned. And obviously, if you want, I can go through those. But it's been like a very interesting journey for me.
No, I mean, definitely, let's talk about some of those things. But I think we're all just a student of it. I'm learning every day, and I've written books on it, and I still pick things up, and I still nuances, and so I think we're always learning. I'm sure your boyfriend is still learning things that work, things that don't work, things you think work all the time don't work all the time. So there's all sorts of little things. I guess, enlighten us on some of the things you've picked up through it.
Yeah. I mean, the most interesting thing for me, and I won't say it's like the most important thing about networking, although it might be the most important thing, but what I found personally very interesting, and actually through talking to some people who felt a bit like insecure or not natural in this like networking surroundings, they shared that they had a similar thing, that basically I used to always view as like new conversations that you strike up as something like, if I can't immediately either benefit from it myself or be beneficial to the other person, that there's like no point in that conversation. And it sounds quite selfish, but I promise you it's not really, because it's to do with your own sort of self-esteem as well. Because I always, before like approaching a new person, even a person I know but don't talk to regularly, and like asking them like, oh, do you want to grab a coffee or whatever, I always think about it. Oh, but why would they be interested in meeting up with me? Like, unless there is an obvious, like something to get from that interaction for them, I always feel a bit awkward offering something. And in the same way, I was kind of like, what's the purpose of meeting somebody new if I don't see how this can benefit both of us. And when I shared these thoughts with my boyfriend, he was like, but it's not really about that. It's not about how you can immediately help each other. It's more about building those connections and investing over time into those new relationships that in the future may help you or may not. And it's fine if they don't, but it's more about creating those new relationships that in the future you will know that, for example, now you met a watercolor artist, for example, who does online trainings, and you've never been interested in watercolor and you don't really know how this can help you. But like in a few weeks or a few months, you can meet somebody who is looking for a watercolor teacher, and you'll be like, oh, actually, I met this great woman who does watercolor online teachings. And so it's kind of about maintaining those relationships, because you never know whom you can meet in the future, or even who you might need to meet in the future yourself. So, you're not interested in watercolor paintings at the moment, but for some reason in a couple of years, this is just what you need, and you'll remember that you met somebody a couple of years ago. So that was a very interesting, like, new way to look at this. And I thought that maybe it's just me, but then I talked through a networking hub. I talked to a woman that I met there, like we had a one-on-one call, and she kind of had the same sort of view. She was like, yeah, I'm trying to get it. She was like, it's interesting, but like, I just don't really see how it can benefit me. And I was like, yeah, I thought in the same way, but it's not entirely about that. It's more like just meeting new people and growing new relationships without the immediate thinking of like, oh, how can I benefit from this? And as I listened to some of your podcasts, and like some people, you sometimes raise how like some connections are not like, you never really use them, and they just, it's not always going to be like spot on great connection. And I obviously have found that myself as well. Like some connections were just it was great. It's always great to meet new people, but it just, you don't really know where it's going to go. But like some of them, they're just like straight away you kind of feel a very good connection and you relate to each other very, very well, and they immediately like think of how they can help you, and like vice versa, and it just works out really, really well. Yeah.
No, I mean, I like how you articulated that. I think a lot of people get hung up on that. To be honest, from time to time, I get hung up on that when somebody's reaching out to me and it's like, okay, what's the point? I don't see what the point is, and I'm not saying that, but I'm thinking that because we're all busy and I'm busy, and it's like, okay, this call is going to take 15, 20 minutes. Is it 15, 20 minutes I really want to invest? And I always have to remind myself that it's not about something I'm going to get or something I'm going to be able to do for them, but it might be that me connecting them to somebody else and me just totally stepping out of the way. In fact, that happened last week. I had met a guy in the United States who does a lot with startups and tech companies, and that's kind of a really foreign space for me. I don't know a lot about it, but I had a call with another individual who was kind of involved with a startup, a techie sort of a startup, and I asked him, would you be interested in meeting this? He was in the UK and this other person was in the United States. Would you be interested in meeting? And, to me, it's like, meh, I'm interested in neither. Right. But to them, it was like, wow, this is great. This is, you hit it out of the park. This is so wonderful. And the analogy one of the analogies I've used as of late is, imagine there's a candy bar. In the United States, we have a candy bar called the Almond Joy bar, and it's got coconut. I don't like coconut, but if I find an Almond Joy bar or somebody gives me an Almond Joy bar, I don't say, no, I don't want the Almond Joy bar. I'll hang on to it. I might put it in the fridge so it doesn't melt, because I'll run into somebody who really likes Almond Joy bars. Why would I not give it to them? Because I don't want it. And in their hands, it's a wonderful thing. So it's all very interesting. But it takes a degree of patience for sure. So you're a journalist, you're a writer, or I know you're working with different companies and that. And it's up to you if you want to get into it. Did those come through networking in a way, or?
Yes, actually, yeah, quite a few. I would say that a lot of the gigs that I had are down to just networking and knowing some people. I wouldn't say all of those are like full-time things. Some of them were just like freelancing. But I definitely have noticed, like with my previous job, not the one that I have now, where I was working for a small media organization here in Ukraine, like English language media organization. I met somebody at a house party before that, and then I was looking for a job, and I at that point I wasn't really thinking much of it, and then I reached out to that person when I was looking for a job. I was like, oh yeah, I've heard you work there, and then I got that job after that. Obviously I went through the interview and everything. It wasn't that quick, but it was thanks to that. And then a lot of the freelancing things that I have been getting, quite a few recently, were just thanks to me working with somebody in the past in my full-time day job, and they went on to do other things. I went on to do other things, and we don't work together, but they reach out to me because they know that this is something I would be able to do. And for example, recently, like I've had a very amazing things happen to me in terms of my work. I've always been like a massive fan of The Guardian. I don't know if I'm allowed to like mention brands, but
no, go ahead. Yep.
Yeah, I've been always like a massive like fan of The Guardian, of the newspaper and the website. And I do these things like sort of mood boards, and I put like things, my own goals. Like I put it on a board, kind of like a dream board where, different areas of my life, what I dream about. And I always sort of put The Guardian there, like, oh, it'd be amazing to write for The Guardian. And just literally like less than a month ago, I was contacted by The Guardian journalist, and he was like, oh, we're looking to get this like coverage about football, because that was during the Euros in Ukraine. We need somebody to do some work on the ground, like, in Ukraine. And I was like, sure, yeah. And I ended up having like a joint byline with him in The Guardian. And that was just amazing. And that was thanks to, because that guy who approached me, I followed him when I was working for that previous media organization in Ukraine that I mentioned, Romanenko. And he came to my media organization a couple of times to give out interviews or something like that. So I followed him on Twitter. He followed me back. And sort of thanks to, even though we never really like talked on a regular basis, but because we were connected on Twitter, and he saw that I was in Ukraine, I was in Kiev, and I tweeted something about football, probably because I was watching Ukraine games, and that's probably why he contacted me. And that was sort of thanks to going out a bit, like, because you can meet somebody, so you can be introduced to somebody, and then you just never really find them on anywhere, any social media. You don't contact them, and it's hard to, once like the person is out of sight, it's kind of like out of mind, and you don't really think, when you need something, you don't think of contacting them. But when you make those efforts to connect on social media or wherever, that then you sort of stay in their mind, or that vice versa. And thanks to maintaining that link, that person can find you, or you can find that person. And it just it's just amazing that a lot of amazing things can come to your life thanks to just knowing the right people. So that's just like one example of work related things, and then obviously there were other freelancing examples.
So are you a big football fan?
I'm a big football fan when Ukraine gets as far in the Euros.
Okay.
I was massively supporting Ukraine, because we got to quarterfinals for the first time ever in terms of Euros. So that's why I was like following it, because I love following my own country.
Who did they lose? Did they lose to England?
Yes.
Okay. I'm not rubbing it in.
No, it's fine. Having an English boyfriend, I had enough of rubbing it into my face.
Well, that's what I was wondering if you would, if he lives in Manchester, right? That's what you said.
Well, he's currently in Kiev with me.
Okay.
So we watched it together in a pub.
Okay.
But yeah, it was quite amusing to have an Ukrainian and English person in a relationship when there's a big game on, and both of us were kind of really into it. And it was hilarious. But then England didn't even win the whole thing, so so he had his own kind of disappointment.
I'm a big soccer fan, or football fan. My kids are as well, so we have a lot of fun with it. So we watch the Euros. Well, let's switch gears here a little bit. Let's talk about you and what you've got going on right now. I know you're working on a book, and we're not going to really delve too much into that, because I want to get you back on when that's about ready to come out. But on your website, you have a free ebook that people can get, 3-step confidence boost. You want to kind of talk about who you are and how people can help you?
Sure. Yeah. I've always been a journalist, as you kind of introduced me rightly. I've been a journalist for a few years now. And I've done different sort of journalism, different sort of reporting, from, covering like fashion shows to covering Eurovision, to interviewing like the president of Switzerland, and being a managing editor of a media organization, which is the one I mentioned before, here in Ukraine. But the one sort of thing that remained constant over most of my life that I can remember myself, I always really, really loved writing. And the thing I enjoy about writing the most, probably, which might sound a bit strange for coming from a journalist, but I really enjoy writing about my own stories and telling something I went through myself, with the intention to help others learn from my own experience. And having kind of been a quite anxious, quite insecure person for a very long time, as long as I remember myself, I at one point a couple of years ago, I decided to buy a life coaching course. And it wasn't with the intention of becoming a life coach, and I'm still not sure I would do one-on-one sort of thing, maybe as a just a one-off thing, but that wasn't my intention to become a practitioner in terms of one-on-one things. But it was more to do with, I wanted to find out more about human behavior and human thought processes, and why certain things happen, and why people act certain ways, and why I act certain ways, and why I think certain things. And since then, it's been kind of like a very interesting learning curve for me. So I did that life coaching course, and then I went on to do a modern applied psychology course. And at the same time, I went through this like 1-year program that was also about becoming like more like setting goals and basically like 10x in your life, and like getting better results everywhere in your life. And through that program, I learned about lots of great literature that was on the same topic. And then I ended up taking another course on well-being by Yale University on Coursera. So that was like the third course that I took in this sort of similar subject, psychology-related subject. And through learning all these things and through reading a lot of literature, I just found out so much. And first of all, I found out a lot about myself in terms of why I had like how my own thinking works, and how a lot of people, not just me, but like tend to process different events, and how a lot of the things that we think are actually just like inflated in our own minds, and they not something it's not even happened. Like a lot of the times we either exaggerate something that has happened and make it sound in our head a lot worse, or we just invent things that never happened and like stress over them too much. And that was like a very interesting, a lot of very interesting revelations coming from all that knowledge and about all that cognitive processes in our head. And then this kind of things came together. I was like, well, I learned a lot about myself, and I learned a lot about human behavior, or I was learning at the time. I'm still learning, like I've not learned and finished learning, obviously. And I was like, well, I like writing about my own experiences, and there's something in there where I can deliver my own knowledge to other people. And part of that, like early on, I started my own newsletter where I would just talk about different things that were happening in my life, or like giving out book recommendations, something I was reading. I would talk to my audience and tell them about some great book that I was reading. So it was just came from my own desire of sharing the knowledge that I've gained, because I feel like a lot of people either never think of like studying psychology deeper and certain things about their own behavior and human behavior in general deeper. For whatever reason, they just don't see why they need it, or they just don't think it's something they need at all, or they claim that they don't have the time. So I was like, well, if I can share a lot of my own knowledge that I gained through all this reading and studying in a very like digestible way. That would be great. And if I can help, at least one people or a few people now, I would just be immensely happy about it. And in the future, I'm hoping to deliver the things that I learned to even bigger audiences.
Okay. Like I said, she's got an ebook out there. I will put a link to her website in the show notes, and you can go there and you can download. It's a free ebook, and three-step confidence boost that Maria has put on. Thanks for being on the program today. I've known you for over a year now, and I've learned a lot. So it's been good.
Yeah, thank you so much, Frank, for having me. It's been a very interesting conversation.
Well, good luck to you.
Thank you. Thanks.
To wrap things up, remember, we're looking for some enterprising business types to join our team as franchisees of AmSpirit Business Connections. Our franchisees work with entrepreneurs, sales representatives, and professionals in their area to help them become more successful through networking and the exchange of quality business referrals in a structured weekly morning meeting. This is a unique franchise opportunity, you see, because these meetings are in the morning. A successful business type or professional can add this franchise opportunity onto what they're already doing. Again, all of our franchisees do something else. For a couple hours in the morning, a few mornings a week, these franchisees work the AmSpirit Business Connections model. The rest of the time, they're attorneys, accountants, realtors, coaches, and consultants of various kinds. The wonderful thing is that not only do our franchisees realize a financial gain from operating the AmSpirit Business Connections model, but the business networks that they build and develop become a great source of referrals for their primary business as well. Perhaps you know someone, perhaps you are that someone. Whatever the case, to learn more about the AmSpirit Business Connections franchise opportunity, please contact me using the email in the show notes or the one we provide at the end of this program.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AmSpirit.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.